Hello everybody, and welcome back to my Fire Emblem Thracia 776 low Turncount Ironman playthrough. I am Lolo Santonia, and I'm joined once again by my good friend Ada.
Hello.
Last time we were joined by Professor Bopper for 4 different chapters, some quite interesting ones. And today we have just one single chapter, which on the surface does not look too remarkable, but it really is worthy of having an entire episode to itself. There's a whole lot to talk about here. Before we get started, I think we'll go get some more appropriate music going. Yeah, that's much better.
So, Chapter 10 is basically a big deal. Not just on its own, but it's almost a turning point for the entire route. It's full of ballistas, which have massive range and can kind of threaten our units wherever they are. It has a very tanky boss on a strong throne with a plus 10 defense bonus, which is where Leaf needs to seize. There's also a wyvern riding sub-boss who's threatening the seize area. There are 2 other strong units, Olwyn and Alfred, who can appear on turn 4 or when you act in a certain area on the map. And, getting past all these threats, we have several very nice side objectives to go for. One of them is the ensorcel stuff, which is basically a reusable pure water. Usually, it would increase the unit's resistance by a big amount for some turns, and then the bonus would taper off over time. But because resistance and magic attack are tied in this game, it means we can boost our mage's attack, and
That
it's
helps us
reusable.
with some offensive benchmarks. It can be quite nice.
Yeah. There's a rescue staff, which allows a staff unit to bring any of our units on the map next to them, which is really useful for getting people around or out of dangerous situations. And finally, there's an S drink, or a stamina drink, which interacts with a mechanic we kind of haven't talked about yet.
Yeah, I think I'll. Fatigue is a mechanic which we don't really have units fatigued yet right now because of the previous chapter. But fatigue is a statistic you can see on this bottom screen here. It's dashed out for Leaf because since he's force deployed, he doesn't have a fatigue stat. But as units perform actions, generally fatigue increments by 1 per action, or it can be increased by more for staffers if they're using like high rank staves like Herman here. And the basic idea is that it's an incentive to not over-rely on any individual unit, because if a unit is fatigued at the start of a chapter, that is, their fatigue exceeds their maximum health, then you will not be allowed to deploy them. But what you can do is, if you have a stamina drink, you can put that in their inventory, and they will be allowed to be deployed on that map. Safi, for example, could often be using high-rank staves for several consecutive chapters in a low Turncount playthrough. And so if you have to have her sit out just a single chapter, you could be losing many turns from that alone. So getting an S rank can be really useful. The main high rank staff that I've been mentioning and alluding to is this warp staff here. We kind of glossed over it a little bit in chapter 7, but at the end of that chapter we received it because of a civilian that we saved in chapter 3. The warp staff is absolutely game-breaking. It allows a unit with A-rank staves, which is why we had to get Safi there. It allows a unit with A-rank staves to warp any adjacent unit to any tile on the map without restriction, aside from terrain, for example. Warp will be incredibly useful in this chapter and many other chapters. This chapter becomes kind of emblematic of many chapters that will be coming, where your quickest strategy is to simply warp somebody somebody to kill the boss, and then you can warp Leaf, and then he can seize, and you can clear the chapter in just 1 or 2 turns. Warp skip strategies, as they're known, are kind of known for 3 different things. They trivialize maps, because you kind of don't have to engage with most of the map. They're really funny, but they're also really risky. So in a context like this, where if we were to you lose an essential unit, then that doesn't mean like, oh no, I've got to reset the chapter. That means that's the end of the run, potentially. We really need to do everything that we possibly can to maximize the reliability of a warp skip. In a chapter like this, we'll be doing that while also still trying to fulfill side objectives. For example, the houses, where you get those staves that Ada was talking about, and potentially getting this stamina drink from the thief. That's a whole lot to deal with, but we can kind of tackle them one by one. So let's sort of start looking at the situation and how we can approach it. Turn that music back on. I messed your whole video. Alright, that's better. What magic you got? One magic. Fucking loser. Did you know there are bridge keys in this game?
What the hell?
Yeah. Like, there's this drawbridge here, and you can use a bridge key on it, and it lowers it. And it's like, yeah, like you've seen this entire game, and you didn't know about them. It's fucking crazy. They're in like 2 chapters or some shit. So over here, though he doesn't appear on the battle preparations just now, he'll appear after we begin the chapter. There will be an Armor Knight boss. He'll be a general, and so he'll have a whole lot of defense, and he also gets the throne bonus with plus 10 defense and 30% avoid. Again, these bosses can be really challenging to deal with, and one of your best options for taking care of them is a unit who deals magical damage, which is why in those first early chapters we were using Evel at range with the Flame Sword. We can't do that now though, because Avel's left our party for story reasons, and we kind of need to find some other unit who can fulfill the role as bosskiller in our team. At this point, we also have only Safi for using the Warp Staff. So for example, she would use the Warp Staff on a bosskiller, they would have to kill the boss, but then she can't Warp Leaf on the same turn, meaning that whoever kills the boss has to also survive all these enemies around, all these ballisticians, the cavaliers potentially, the Draconite, not to mention the boss himself, and potentially Alwyn and Fred who appear here. In a normal party, you wouldn't really have any unit who could both reliably take care of the boss and yet reliably take on all of the enemies that are around and threatening the seize point. But we've kind of been taking measures to rectify that. And so that introduces our pilked up Asbel. Ada, would you like to tell us a little bit about what our pilked up Asbel is?
Asbel is full of Pilk. That is to say, he has a personal tome, Graph Caliber. Have we talked about Graph Caliber yet?
A little bit, I think. It's incredible. It has 13 might, it has 100 hit, 40 crit, so he just always crits with his pursuit critical coefficient, and it doesn't really weigh him down much. So it really is just one of the best boss killing weapons in the game.
He has a lot of items invested into him. The reason, you don't usually see a mage at this level with 45 HP, 9 defense. Yeah, like a mage wouldn't have this kind of defenses usually. But we gave him the life ring, the shield ring, the speed ring.
In total,
we gave him the rings.
In total, right now, Asbel has had 2 life rings, a shield ring, a speed ring, and a luck ring, not to mention his promotion, because all of those help him reach defensive benchmarks, and the luck ring, while a lot of people might just go ahead and sell that, that's +3 avoid, which compounds when he's facing as many enemies as he is. Notably, he has 2 huge enemy phases in this playthrough that he's going to want to maximize survival on. So really using the life ring on Asbel is much better than just selling it, considering that money management isn't really much of a problem. Furthermore, we've given him a whole lot of level ups. He got to level 13, if I remember right, before promoting. So he's had 13 total level ups right now. And so his stats are kind of... No one else in our team, even like, the promoted Dagda, this Chad, no one else really has stats quite like Asbel, who's, like he capped speed in chapter 5. And with Asbel, of course, because he's seeing these big enemy phases, for example, every single stat on Asbel matters, aside from strength, which he literally cannot use. So really just stacking so much experience into him to try and get his stats as high as possible really does help him out. And Arda, would you like to tell us about what the K stands for?
Usually facing this many enemies on a single enemy phase after killing a boss would have a certain emotional toll on most units, but luckily Asbel was born with killing intent, so he should be fine.
So yeah, naturally Asbel would not really be such a juggernaut unit like he is right here. But with the stat boost items that we have access to, like the double life ring and the shield ring, we could potentially turn any unit really into a juggernaut. Asbel just happens to be the best candidate because he will already hit the offensive benchmarks that he wants to. It's just defense that he struggles with. By doing so, we've got quite the toolkit right now. We have the perfect boss killer for the rest of the game. Additionally, we have an A-rank staffer who can warp him to any tile on the map, notably next to the boss. So future maps we really can just clear quite reliably in just a couple turns. The boss isn't the only concern. We can see there are lots of enemies around here, such as there's this Draco Knight sub-boss called Dvorak. There are 2 ballisticians who are in range of the gate area. There are all these cavaliers, and of course there's still Olwen and Fred to be concerned about. So even though we've invested so heavily into Asbel, we should still take some measures to make sure that his reliability and his survival are maximized. First of all is Olwen and Fred. As Arda explained, they will appear on turn 4, but they will actually appear early if you perform an action on this left half of the map. I believe it's past around this line or so. And if we're warping Asbel so that he can kill the boss, that's quite a concern because, of course, you have to act to kill the boss. But really, you don't actually, because we can instead simply warp Asbel to one of the tiles surrounding the boss, and then he can have the boss kill himself on enemy phase instead. So by doing that, we can clear the chapter before Olwen and Fred appear on turn 4, and we won't have to worry about them at all. This kind of begs the question of which tile we warp Asbel to, because we still want to make sure that he's facing fewer enemies aside from Olwen and Fred. And fortunately, just above the boss is this mountain tile. By sitting on this mountain tile, Asbel's going to gain plus 5 defense, bringing him to 14, and he's also going to have plus 30% avoid. He's going to have a real nice avoid stat, like 74-ish. So really, by sitting on this mountain, Asbel only has to worry about the boss on the gate, about this Wyvern Rider, and about these 2 ballisticians, because he's out of range of every single one of these cavaliers here. We already know that Asbel's chance of survival standing on this mountain is really good, because he would have to actually get hit by about all of the enemies around here, but we'd still like to know roughly what his chance of survival is, because a goal of mine in this format is to calculate the total chance of success through the right route entirely. That is to say, if you were to just pick up a controller and play start to finish, then aside from things that you can't calculate, such as adaptation and indoor Manster, and some defend maps we'll get to later, what would be your probability of just having a successful run? Because there are some events in this playthrough where you will have a chance of death which you can't really avoid, and there's just not really anything you can do about it. If you were to kind of try and calculate Asbel's chance of death here on this enemy phase, you'd probably have quite a hard time, just on the merit that you don't know what Asbel's stats will be necessarily. You could use his averages, but those don't reflect every single playthrough, and also these ballisticians will also have variance in their stats. Fortunately, however, I managed to fluke a B in computer science, so I have really basic programming knowledge. With this, I could, instead of taking out a pen and paper and calculating his chance of survival, I could simply simulate the scenario and run it like a million times or so, and record the number of times that he dies, and by that calculate approximately what his chance of survival is. A simulation like this could also show what his chance of survival would be if you were to just pick up the game and play from chapter 1 to here, because you could automatically level Asbel for each iteration of the simulation. And you could also automatically level each of these ballisticians. After this, you would just roll random numbers in a sequence to see which of the enemies managed to hit Asbel, tallying the total damage that he's accumulated in the background, and then at the end, if the damage exceeds his maximum health, you would count it as a death. This would be a lot of work though, definitely excessive for considering that we don't really need to know his chance of death that accurately, because it's not really going to change our decision making in this playthrough, but because I am the way that I am, I did it anyway. So how many of our 1 million Asbels die? You can really see the stat boosting items that we've invested into Asbel coming into play, because if you were to just give him 12 levels in a promotion and then warp him onto this mountain tile, then you would find that, given his variable levels, around 9% of playthroughs, he would end up dying, and the run would end right there. But if you invest all of the stat boosters into Asbel, as we have, and you can see how they progressively affect his chance of survival, by investing all of them, it slowly goes down to around 0.3% chance of death. 0.3% is much more acceptable for a route like this, considering that it would just end the run, and we really want to get to like around below 5% chance of death for the total, for the run as a whole. This may still seem a little bit excessive, especially like the luck ring, again, which people kind of see as a kind of dump stat. But really, Asbel doesn't just need these stats here. Asbel has defensive benchmarks he needs to meet later in the game. Again, there is one other notable big enemy phase that he'll face, and there are many other smaller scenarios where he really does appreciate the boosted defense and health stats. With our pilked up Asbel, we finally have a reliable option for clearing up the area around the seize point and making it safe so that we can warp Leaf and end the map in just a few turns. So we can finally get back to some of the side objectives and see what we'll be doing for the rest of the chapter. First off is this village here with the Ersonal staff, and the notable thing is that it's across a river and with a drawbridge, which I guess you could unlock, but really our quickest option to get there is with Karen. We can have her mount and then we can get her into position, and then she can just fly over and visit the house on as soon as turn 3. Unfortunately, however, she only has 8 movement, and so she can't actually reach here and still canto back out of range of the ballista, who would most certainly one-shot her with 45 effective might. Instead, since we know that we're warping this map, what we can do is, on the final turn, when we know we're going to warp Leaf, we can just have Karen go into ballista range and visit the village, and then she doesn't face an enemy phase at all because we're seizing. Over here is the rescue staff, which performs the inverse operation of the warp staff, where it takes a unit from any tile on the map and transports them to a tile adjacent to the staffer. This is much more niche because, of course, with the warp staff you can take a unit and warp them to the throne, but there are fewer scenarios where you would really want to take a unit who's far away and warp them near the user. But it is still pretty useful in a few maps, and it's definitely something that we want to get a hold of. Normally the best option would be to send someone like Finn there, and that's what we'll be doing here as well. However, if you try to play as quickly as possible, Finn's going to face a small chance of death. So on turn 2 player phase, Finn is going to be in range of all 3 of these ballisticians, and oftentimes that's going to mean that he gets 3-shot by them. And so he'd have a small chance of death, from memory around 3% or something. Finn isn't like the most important unit, so we could probably go on without him, but we'd really do appreciate him in a few chapters, so it would be quite a loss. As such, while you would normally go for a 3-ton, we may end up going for a 4-ton, depending on what luck we get. And the final thing to talk about is the stamina drink here. The stamina drink is incredibly important in a low turn count playthrough, as we explained before, but unfortunately it's incredibly unreliable to obtain one here. A quirk about the thieves on this chapter is that on any given turn, they have a 50% chance of not doing anything and just standing still, which is really unfortunate because in some strategies, such as Don 151's, what you would do is you would go for a 3-turn where Finn carries Lithis, and he makes his way as quickly as possible over to this house. And then on turn 3 player phase, he can visit the house, and Lithis, who was dropped on turn 2, can go full move, and he can steal a stamina drink from the thief. Unfortunately, this doesn't really work for us, because the thief would have to move on both of his actions, which is only about a 25% occurrence, and additionally, he could roll really high speed, in which case Lithis can't steal from him at all, and so we'd probably have to have Finn try and capture, for example. After spending many hours on this chapter preparing, I could never find a way that I was happy with that could reliably get me a stamina drink. And so unfortunately, what we end up doing is we just leave it. Normally you would use the stamina drink for these following few chapters on Safi, and that would mean that you can walk through every single one of them. But instead, we just have to have Safi sit out one of them, and because one of them has to be played completely warpless, we'll end up losing around 3 or 4 turns compared to a regular strategy. It is worth noting, however, that if this thief happens to roll 8 movement, which is 10%, and that he also chooses to move on turn 1, which is again 50%, so 5 total, he will, instead of moving towards the house, he will move towards here, which is where most of our units will be. This is fortunate because then on turn 2, Finn can just capture him with no problem at all. That means that we can get a stamina drink, which we normally wouldn't have, but of course because it's only a 5% occurrence, we can't really plan for it. So it's just sort of something that we go with if it happens. Alright, after all that preparation, let's actually get started with the chapter. I think I've got everyone ready, let me double check. He really did just do the warps behind you.
There he goes.
There he goes. That was a wacky fucking Safi level. She just got
defense level.
She just got strength and defense. Defense is 3%. Alright, time for ult to all pay off. Animations on.
Oh, hell yeah.
Something that we didn't mention is I brought up the 0.3% chance of death statistics. Asbel actually has 0% chance of death here. He got really lucky, and in my simulation that I ran, I changed it so that instead of auto-leveling him, it just gives him the stats that he has here. And in that simulation, I ran it 1 billion times to try and see if I could possibly get him to die, and he never did. Theoretically, he could sometimes die if the enemies got incredibly high rolls, and if both of the ballisticians got high rolls, and that every single enemy hit them. But yeah, you can see, like, they're not doing anything to them.
As of that miss, oh, there he goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he can't die.
Get Khan? We're looking out for Khan. Damn. It would be really good if Asbel had managed to get Khan. It would allow a more reliable strategy later, but unfortunately it doesn't look like it's going to happen. He might get another level here. Let's go. Saving some Graph Caliber uses, much appreciated. Oh, will he level that?
He's critting for efficiency.
Damn. Yeah, so we'll be going into a less reliable chapter 12. Something unfortunate right now is that Asbel has 6 con, which is the exact same that Leaf has here. We would much prefer that Asbel and Leaf had different cons, because in a few chapters that would allow a different strategy, which not only is more reliable there, but allows Leaf to seize on the turn that he's walked here instead of having to live an enemy phase, because here we're going to have to hammer on the warp staff so that it's at full uses. So it's quite unfortunate that we can't do that strategy, but it's still pretty reliable, so we should be fine. I mentioned earlier that oftentimes Finn can die to these ballisticians, and so what we would sometimes do is instead of sending Finn full move here, we would have him park on this forest here. Fortunately, however, our Finn has quite a bit of defense, and so even if every single one of these ballisticians manages to hit him, he will still live on 2 HP. So we can just have him go full move and work to a 3-turn instead of a 4-turn. Oh, I need you to not die, Leaf. Let's get this over with. I've been worrying a bit all day because Leaf does have a small chance of death. It's very small, so really I shouldn't be worried. The thing that worries me is that I don't actually know what his chance of death is. I haven't simulated this yet. I'll put his chance of death on screen because I'm sure I will have by the time that this comes out. But yeah, I'm not excited. Please do me good, Leaf. Leaf isn't very strong, but now we can take advantage of a thrown bonus. And so he's gonna have to live against all of these cavaliers and these 2 ballisticians. Doing so, he's gonna have 70 to avoid, so he's gonna be facing hit rates that are pretty consistently, I don't think anyone's having above 20 hit. I think this ballistician with really high hit at 90 is gonna be the highest. Yeah, like he's facing 10 hit from most of these guys at most. But there's a small chance of death, and that scares me. Please do me good, Leaf. Alright, there's nothing more to be done. Wish me the best, Ardo.
I'm manifesting a crit.
Hold on, let me just burn some RNs. There's no way he gets crit because he has the light brand, so he gets plus 10 luck. So he has like
oh yeah, true.
Some fat nuts dodge. Let's go, Leaf. Level Con! Level Con!
Level Con!
Level Con! He might get some kills. I'm not sure how many he doubles. Con? Fuck. That defense is good.
Defense? Defense.
I don't think that's gonna change
lives.
like how many enemies he can live, but hey.
He's fine.
I wanna see you doubling more. 1 round some dude. Come on, give it to me, Leaf.
Oh, that was close.
He might get another level up, even though— Fuck you, what are you doing? Oh, man. Okay, I guess he's not getting that level. He's gonna have 2 rounds of combat against ballisticians, but that's not gonna get it for him. Damn.
Wait, what did that last guy do?
Just fucking nothing. He just walked the other way.
Why?
He was intimidated, I'm sure. He might have had 0 damage on Leaf. No one really understands Thracia AI, I should say. There are some games that are entirely based on, like, AI manipulation, like the DS games, but, like, this playthrough has exactly 1 loose AI manipulation in it. We made it. And it's a 3-ton, which is real good. Let's just see we lost few enemies. Turn animations back off for next chapter, and we'll get going. Did any of those— okay, yeah, now they're moving. So you can see, like, with those— that thief just decided not to move on turn 1. So in a triple S playthrough where you're playing for a 3-turn, as I've done before, on turn 2 you would just have to reset. Anyway, let's get that rescue stuff. There we go. Oh, now we're playing some goddamn Thracia. We're starting to get there. We're getting souped up. We got the Insoro stuff. And we didn't get con. Yeah. So they have different con stats. What that means is that even though the warp staff is at 1 use right now, we have to commit what will probably hurt some people at home. We have to use Haman on the warp while it's at 1 use. if we were able to use the strategy where Asbel or Leaf rescue each other, then we could go through a later chapter with just a single warp use instead of 2, and this means that we save 2 warp uses total, because not only do we save the warp use in that chapter, but we don't have to Herman warp early. Alright, let's get out of this fucking chapter. Thank you so much for joining us. There will be nowhere near as much talk on preparations next time. Hope you join us for another special guest. What do we say? How do you do an outro?
Shouldn't we? How did we do outros last time?
I don't know. We don't really. We're just kind of bad at
There's a kind of trend of the outro is you talking about not knowing what to do for the outro.
Yeah.
But if you do that, are you just like
You're
succumbing to
fucking
the curse?
I'm not doing that. If I do that, then it's just this conversation and it ends on like a fucking like Windows error screen.
That would be like, it would be admitting to yourself that you are forever a YouTuber.
No, I can't ever do that. But like, I don't want to be a YouTuber, so I'm not gonna do that.
So we have to get good at outros. You're absolutely right.
Fuck, I've actually locked myself in. How do I do this? No.
To what?
Like, I've forgotten like what I was saying before, so like I don't know how to flow off of it. I don't know how we can possibly end this recording, aside from lol, I'm bad at outros.
I remember you were saying, I hope you'll join us next time for another special guest.
Yeah, we'll have another special guest. I can't believe it. Pope Francis, we got him. Bye.